Guys, welcome to episode 137 of the World of Goldcraft. As usual, I'm your host, the Lazy Goldmaker, and I am going to be talking about gold making in World of Warcraft. Now, welcome. If you're following along live, make sure you post your questions in chat, and I'll answer some of them at the end. And if you're not following along live, then be aware that you can do so. I usually record these around 3 p.m. Central European summertime, so that's UTC +2. On Wednesdays at Twitch TV/LazyGoldmaker. Now for the discussion point this week, I'm going to talk about a little bit about market efficiency. And that's an interesting term, and it's something from real world economics and even economic theory. And in the efficient market hypothesis is that prices in a market are dependent on all or are based on all available information, which means that prices are efficient. You can't know anything more, and thus you can't make better choices than what's already known. So this usually implies that there aren't any significant opportunities to beating the market, to making more money. Now, of course, this is usually applied to stuff like stocks and other securities, and not so much to items that have a real, like commodities that have a real world useful application. And also what we find in both the real world and particularly in World of Warcraft, which is where obviously we're going to apply this, is that markets are very rarely fully efficient. Very rarely. It can happen on some level with stocks, I guess, but there are so many items that are mispriced in World of Warcraft that are not efficient, and there are some things I've noticed several of them lately, which is why I'm talking about this today. And that's often because people who are buying and selling these items do not have all the available information, or they're not using all the available information, or they have different viewpoints. They are, maybe if it's a material, they might be using it for two different crafts. That's going to mean that for one of them, the price is probably going to be too high, and for someone else, the price is going to be too low, or this is going to be a cheap material and something they can make a lot of money with. Because in WoW, of course, almost every item in WoW that you can trade is an item that is a commodity that's useful in its own right. It's a material that you can turn into potions or gear, or it's a piece of gear that you can equip and get more powerful. So obviously, like, the base supply of people actually needing this item for a specific use case is going to have an impact, which is going to be one of the reasons why we wouldn't really expect like the efficient market hypothesis to hold true completely in WoW. But if WoW was efficient, the more efficient the market is, the less opportunities there are to find like outsized large profits. And we're going to assume that the WoW markets always get more efficient over time. So when a new expansion comes along, like TBC right now, there's going to be so many niches that people haven't tried yet. And there's going to be small markets, things, tricks that people find that's super profitable right now. And we wouldn't expect all of these to have the same profit potential, but over time, we should expect that most gold making methods should trend together. They should try to converge on like roughly the same amount of gold per hour. Assuming that the only way to do this gold making method is to actually focus on doing it. Because when someone finds something that's super profitable, more people are going to find that, both because people like me and other people are always looking for profitable things to do in WoW. And because when those things and methods are found, they're also shared widely on the internet relatively quickly. Maybe you just share them with a few people first, or maybe someone shares them with the Discord, or maybe someone shares them with the entire internet on their website. And that's going to bring in more people and brings margins down, and then people hunt for more things, and then gradually they should trend towards like you should pick whatever. If you always pick whatever is most profitable, then you're going to bring down the profitability on that. Then over time, everything should have roughly the same amount of profitability. It probably never converges completely because there are loads of other reasons why you can't swap directly, particularly in TBC. If you have maxed alchemy and maxed enchanting is more profitable, it's going to take you a lot of gold and a lot of time to re-level your profession. So that's not something you do because there are some barriers to entry. So yeah. Now, opportunities to take advantage of inefficiencies will typically happen in WoW when an item can be used in multiple different ways. And also, in particular, when there's a lot of players using information incorrectly. Now, I've seen both of these things happen, and we have some examples from TBC Classic that I was going to share. And there's going to be loads of stuff happening when people just don't know yet. Like, a lot of people are relying heavily on guides, obviously, with TBC, since it's a known expansion. But they don't have time to know everything themselves, so they're going to do what the guide tells them to do. And right now, on top of that, in TBC, people are so many different places along the path. So some people are level 70, or have even cleared Coruscant. They're farming gear, farming rep. Some people are still leveling. Some people are power leveling professions. And they have vastly different priorities on the auction house. Some people are farming for their epic flying. So many different things that people are doing. That's going to lead to loads of very large differences in what we consider the right value for an item, and that's going to lead to very varying prices, and they will change all over the place. Now, one thing I saw, which was interesting, is the rep tokens for the Scryer's reputation. Because there are two token types. There's one that drops from lower level mobs. You can only farm those in Terracar Forest. And then there's one that drops from higher level mobs, from max level zones. And most guides suggest using the lower level tokens up to Honored. That's where they stop giving reputation. Now, there is one limitation to the higher level token. You can't turn those in until you are level 68. But the implicit assumption for turning in the Firewing signets until Honored is that we assume that they are cheaper because they drop from lower level mobs. But if they're not cheaper, then there's no point in buying them and grinding to Honored with them. If they're more expensive, you're better off buying the Sunfury signets. Because they give the same amount of rep per token, there's no difference. In fact, the Sunfury signet is objectively better because you can also use that past Honored. Hilariously, at some points this week, the Firewing signet, the worst one, was selling for more than 3 times as much as the Sunfury signet on my realm. And it's very weird. So that's something that you can right well tell that this is not how these people have not considered what they're doing. There might be opportunities to buy Sunfury signets and sell them for a higher price point, or it might be that Firewing signets are just too expensive. Now, for this item in particular, it's because the Firewing signets only drop from a single mob area in the entire game. There's just Firewing Point in Terracar Forest. So it's actually super hard to farm Firewing signets, but it's very easy to farm Sunfury signets. They drop all over the place as long as you're level 70. So that was pretty interesting, and that's definitely something that should not continue to be the case once people actually look up stuff on the auction house and realize that the Sunfury signets are better. Potentially it could flip the Sunfury signets, or potentially that what's going to happen is that the Firewing signets will just plummet in price once people realize that buying these for more than twice the cost of a Sunfury signet is really stupid. So yeah. Now, what we also often can see is that materials can be used for different professions or different recipes. And there's usually going to be like the most in demand, the most profitable recipe is usually going to determine the price, at least if it uses a very large quantity of the materials. So you've seen this, for instance, in retail WoW currently with the jewel crafting essences, which is the only reason to prospect, and their price is 100% determined by legendaries. And that's pretty much the same with heavy callus hides, where you could use heavy callus hides for crafting Crafter's Mark II. But that's super expensive because all of the callus hides were needed to level leatherworking legendaries. And that meant that callus hides were super expensive. And they're so expensive that the Crafter's Mark II with leatherworking has never been profitable. Most likely, never will. It'll never be worth it. Another example of this I've seen in TBC this time with prospecting. Right now, people are leveling professions, which means that they're starting at 300. So they need a lot of fel iron to get through the first couple of levels, and then the later levels are with adamantite, of course. But first they need to buy fel iron. So fel iron spiked in price first. Now, if you're a jewel crafter like I am, You just really need raw ore to prospect. So you're going to prospect whatever is most profitable. Adamantite ore gives more ore per prospect. So I'm willing to pay more for adamantite ore than fel iron. But hilariously, due to the fact that so many other people needed or want, or maybe they didn't think, maybe they were thinking like, okay, entry level prospecting, I'm going to go with fel iron because it's the lowest level ore. And then they don't stop and check and realize the fact that on my realm, adamantite ore was selling for 30 silver less per ore than fel iron. So that was just straight up way more profitable. And you should never prospect fel iron if it's more expensive than adamantite. It's never worth it. I don't even have to do any math to figure this out. I can just compare the two prices. And whoa. I know that I wanted to do adamantite ore, and I've prospected loads of adamantite ore, and I'm making a lot of sales with jewel crafting. And that's because either it's because some other people are buying ore, loads of people are probably buying ore, some are using it for prospecting, some are using it to make bars and level blacksmithing, some are using it for potentially other things, I don't know. But if you're only considering it from jewel crafting, then you will prefer naturally to buy adamantite since it gives more gems and that's going to save you time. And when it's cheaper as well, that's just a no-brainer. And I can take advantage of this one. Since I only buy ores to prospect, I just take advantage of this, buy tons of adamantite, and I'm super happy. Now, these kinds of things happen a lot, and particularly early on in an expansion or patch. And it's very important to think beyond just what the guides are telling you or what the people online are telling you. Think about why you're doing something. So the Scryer Signet example, I think, is particularly damning. You don't really even need high Scryer's rep or Alder rep before you're level 70. And you can turn in Sunfury Signets when you're 68. So, like, past of turning in the one quest that also gives XP with Firewing Signets, there's no point in buying them if they're more expensive. No point. I have to believe that it's because people are just reading the guides and are just like, yeah, we use Firewing Signets. Maybe they think you have to use Firewing Signets up to Honored. They didn't read closely enough. I don't know. But they're not making good decisions. They're acting with incomplete information. And some of this is stuff that's very easily available. But there's one thing you can rely on is that this will happen again and again and again and again and again. Very few people actually care about economic optimization in WoW. And an even smaller portion of those are good at it or even understand like the theory, the abstract theory, which doesn't really matter. You don't really need to understand this to make gold. But it's going to help a little bit. And it's especially going to help you trying to identify holes in the player-based knowledge that you can take advantage of. Another example from the past where the information differential played a huge part was, of course, corrupted gear in Ny'alotha, corrupted BOEs. Very, very few people actually understood the value of their own of the items that they had. That their BOEs, they have no idea what they were worth. And BOE flipping was at the strongest ever because people just did not price their items correctly. The market was incredibly inefficient. Because it was so hard to have all the right information about how good an item was. Because you had to consider the armor type, the item level base, did it have a socket, which classes builds is this corruption the best in slot for, and all of trying to figure all of that out while posting it to the auction house at the right price. People just couldn't do it. And if you had better information or a better idea about which corruptions were good, which slots were good, you made a killing on the auction house just buying underpriced BOEs. You could find them every day and you could sell them for huge amounts of profit, huge amounts. Like you could make more than 100k per item on when you found good ones, like several 100,000. I think even some of the more expensive ones were literally selling for millions. So the important skill here is obviously trying to understand when something is underpriced and when, okay, is this underpriced because it's a good buy, or is it underpriced because the market demand is collapsing? As long as an item will remain useful in the future at roughly the same rate as it is right now, and there's no change in how easily it is to obtain it, then generally it should be a good buy if prices have gone down. But as I said, it's in the nature of all of these inefficiencies to be discovered, to get noticed, and to get swamped eventually as more and more players notice it and go into it. So eventually they'll balance out. So being able to identify these kinds of opportunities on your own is really what's going to set the top of gold making apart from the people below. If you can identify opportunities like this when people might have incomplete information, when information that's popular is outdated or wrong, this happens so often. I remember particularly in Classic, I played a rogue. I raided, I went into a lot of the theory crafting for what's the best gear and all that stuff, and I was using a spreadsheet to figure that out that someone had made. And I realized that a lot of the stuff that was in like the WoW head best in slot gear guides, a lot of that stuff was wrong. So there's a lot of like, it wasn't super wrong. It wasn't like you're gonna not do DPS. It was just like, there's some nuances a little bit of nuance that meant that with swapping out a couple of items, you could actually get better DPS output. So those kinds of things, if you know more than the average player, then you can often take advantage of it. Whether it's knowing efficient farms, knowing efficient routes, knowing what items to target, knowing anything, knowing how much value an item has because you know a different use case that most people don't consider. That's going to give you profit, and that's going to be important to focus on. All right, so that was it for market inefficiencies. Now we're going to take some questions. If you have any in chat, now is the time to post them. And we'll take one from a patron that was posted on my Discord earlier. This is a TVC question. And the question is, should I save Shadowmoon Valley or Netherstorm for quests for gold, presumably, at max level? Now, my personal opinion is that you shouldn't really save any of them. I don't think the gold generation for max level quests is important at all. I think that's because you're not getting a load of gold. It's like 10, 11 gold extra per quest, something like that. And how many quests are you realistically doing at max? Okay, so maybe if you do 50 quests, that's like 500 gold. Cool. You can get that so easily from professions, from material flipping, from anything, from farming even. I don't think there's any point in delaying quests for gold generation. I think it's completely pointless, in fact. I think you should rather just do whatever you like for leveling, do whatever quests you like, work on reputations that are going to give you good recipes, and then just spend your time learning the auction house, learning material flipping, which is going to be really good in TBC. Get into some stuff like Old World. There's some very good enchanting shuffles from Classic right now. So many opportunities like that are going to be way better gold per hour than doing quests at max level. So we have 2 questions from chat as well. What professions do you think are the most profitable on TBC? Hard to say so far, but generally speaking, I think alchemy will be really good due to the fact that consumables are always really good, and you can very easily sell. What was I talking about? Yeah, you can sell them very easily since it's the old auction house based on stack sizes, so it's just very good. And then I like jewel crafting has been really good for me so far. People are always going to need more gems. Some of the gear professions might be profitable, but I don't think they're going to be as good. So I would say that for me, alchemy and jewel crafting stand out as the front runners. And then we have from King25, is getting into retail WoW worth right now? I mean, if you want to get in, try it out. I still play retail WoW. I still have a lot of fun in retail WoW. So yeah, try it out. There's never a particularly good point or bad point. Just get into it. Try it. See if it's fun. If it's not fun, then go play something else. There's always people entering and leaving WoW, so there's no point in like asking people, is this the right time? Just get into it. See if you like it. And then from Biakoya, your observations are logical, but how often do they become patterns that you can use before the fact? That very much depends. Like, once you reach some kind of steady state equilibrium of markets, then it's very rarely happens. But during expansion launches, there's loads of opportunities to notice patterns that are out of whack. But it can be hard to realize what you're looking at. So I don't know, like this is not something that's making me tons of money in terms of understanding the pattern and understanding what's going to happen. It's more about looking at the auction house and realizing that, hey, this doesn't make sense. If I wanted to achieve thing X in game, then I would be willing to pay more for this item than this item, but the item I would be willing to pay more for is much cheaper right now. So there's something that's out of whack. So yeah. So that's going to be it for this episode. We're at 20 minutes now. Thank you so much for hanging out with me. I hope you enjoyed the show. If you did and you want to read about gold making, head on over to thelazygoldmaker.com. If you want to support the show, you can do so at patreon.com/thelazygoldmaker. And you can find us on Spotify, YouTube, anywhere where you can find podcasts. We'll see you on the next one. Have a profitable week. Goodbye, guys.